Good morning on a perfect morning. Jane, why don't you call the roll?
Regent Bartel.
I'm here.
Regent Bradley. Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Drew. Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Manydeeds.
Here.
Regent Pointer.
Here.
Regent Pruitt. Regent Shervin.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. A quorum is present.
Thank you, Jane. Far be it from me to rush anybody through anything, but I do want to point out that not only is the weather beautiful, but the first pitch in the Brewer game is at 4:07, and various people have to return to their home areas perhaps to see the game.
Thank you
Right?
for that consideration. Thank you.
I was,
Or
I was-
traffic.
That's right, all that traffic going down there. First thing, I have a few things to start with. The first is more ministerial, just to report to you that a written report of the Technical College System Board has been filed, and you've gotten copies of it. Same with the Hospital Board report. In the case of the Technical College Board, our representatives are regents who are our members, our regents Tyler, Crane, Evers, and Smith. In the case of the Hospital Board, it's regents Walsh, Bartel, and Falbo. And I would suggest if anybody has any questions about those things, they speak to one of those regent representatives. I'm going to start out with a few things. First, I'm pleased to report that our two student regents, Troy Shervin and Katie Pointer, recently appeared before the Senate's Higher Education Committee for their confirmation hearings. My understanding is they did an excellent job, very capably answering the questions they were asked, and I further understand that a formal committee vote on their confirmations is scheduled for next Wednesday, so we will know then. As you know, we still have 3 additional regent appointments awaiting. The governor's office has indicated that we can expect an announcement of those appointments sometime soon, and I continue to hope that that is the case so that we can welcome and include the new appointees in the work of the board. There's been an increasing amount of other legislative committee activity in the Capitol that is of interest to the regents. In the last month, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Higher Education met to hear Senator Harsdorf's bill, SB 184, to extend the timing of the UW task force for 1 more year. And the task force issue is going to come up a couple times during the rest of the morning, so that's very relevant to us. The new chairperson of the committee, Senator Dale Schultz, who I think is from Richland Center, has been a strong supporter of the UW system and has expressed his willingness to have informational hearings on issues we find of interest as well as on legislation. We look forward very much to working with him in that regard, and I am anxious to hear what the result is about the pushing back of the time frame on the task force. And we'll talk about Mike in a minute. Representative Steve Nass has convened the Assembly Colleges and Universities Committee several times. He has held hearings on several financial aid bills of importance to the system, as well as the bills that provide for geographical representation for the regents. We have previously expressed the regents' support of the geographical representation bills, and we appreciate Representative Nass's willingness to move that legislation through his committee. Also, as you've seen in news reports, the governor recently introduced a jobs package special session. There are nearly 40 bills included, some of which may affect our UW system institutions. We're working on analyzing those bills now, and we hope to update you as more information is developed. And we are, of course, very interested in the work of the Legislative Task Force. I know that President Riley is going to provide us with an update on where things stand in various ways with the task force. But first, I want to address for you a related topic, what I'd call the evolving role of the Regents. As we learned in September, the President's Advisory Committee on the Roles of UW System Administration, which Regent Pruitt so ably chaired, strongly recommended a, quote, shift toward a decentralized model compared with current practice, close quote. In his response to that committee's report, President Riley emphasized new substantive roles for chancellors, a new leadership philosophy, and an examination of alternative board structures. We are rapidly moving down the road set by the Advisory Committee report and Kevin's response. As we do so, we are increasingly mindful of the need to reconsider and perhaps redefine the role of the Board of Regents in the system. For that reason, it is useful to begin this morning with consideration of which aspects of our future work as Regents are likely to remain the same and which may evolve into something new and different. The current Wisconsin statutes set forth a multitude of specific, clear directives to the Regents. A few illustrations suffice. Offering night courses and part-time programs at the law school, operating the Geological and Natural History Survey, establishing the State Laboratory of Hygiene, and conducting bovine brucellosis research. Changing gears a bit, the long-time general statutory language from the 1971 merger legislation is especially relevant, more open to interpretation, and the primary basis for our oversight responsibility. I'll quote that. The primary responsibility for governance of the system shall be vested in the board, which shall enact policies and promulgate rules for governing the system, plan for the future needs of the state for university education, ensure the diversity of quality undergraduate programs while preserving the strength of the state's graduate training and research centers, and promote the widest degree of institutional autonomy within the controlling limits of system-wide policies and priorities established by the board. That language is still there, and that language sets a context in which we operate. Not to be forgotten, however, are other core responsibility statutes that continue to authorize us, for example, to select our system president, to select our chancellors, and to set tuition and other charges. Refreshing our memories about continuing statutory responsibilities, however, is but background for today's discussion. What I would like us to consider is what path should we follow to determine changes that may be necessary in how we conduct our business and how we govern the system in light of the new realities resulting from the 2011-13 budget bill, the Advisory Committee report, and increased delegation of decision-making to system institutions. One area of concern is what will be the focus of our Education Committee going forward. Although the UW institutions will now be primarily responsible for ensuring the quality of their programs, the Regents have continuing statutory responsibility for ensuring, quote, the diversity of quality undergraduate programs, close quote. What does this mean for the Education Committee in particular and for the board in general? What type of analysis and information should be available for review? With greater authority vested in the institutions and less in the system office, what level of detail should the board expect on general education matters? How will the board determine if there's an unmet need in program array, for example? Another area to explore is budgeting. Certainly the board retains responsibility for reviewing, analyzing, and setting the overall budget for the system. However, with the new flexibility of block grants for UW institutions, the nature of budget detail may well change. We may, for example, focus more on outcomes than inputs. As to our annual accountability report, the biennial budget's addition of specific new accountability indicators makes it likely that we will be assessing an even greater number of accountability measures. How should the board best balance decentralization with oversight regarding accountability issues? As the locus of authority for numerous management decisions changes, the board still needs to be able to assure the citizens of the state of the soundness of those decisions. At a minimum, it is timely to consider the extent to which our accountability measures, both long-standing and new, require changes to the type and amount of information available to the board. In addition, I suggest that we must give careful consideration as well to various crucial leadership questions. How should the board best monitor whether decentralization is in fact furthering our current goals and objectives, or is instead a kind of retrograde return to pre-merger problems? How do we best initiate statewide consideration of necessary financial investment and reinvestment, especially from Wisconsin GPR funds, to address the state's higher education needs through programs such as the Growth Agenda? How do we, consistent with the worthy purposes of decentralization, coordinate internal research allocations between and among UW institutions, encourage cross-institutional collaborations, and consider possible need-driven mission changes? In sum, based on these examples, I believe it is timely to consider all aspects of our role as Regents. Simply stated, what do we see as our core responsibilities in light of present-day fiscal and other realities? And once we answer that question, what changes, if any, should we make in how we accomplish our business? Regarding the topic of how best to accomplish our business, I return to a concept I raised in July, the possibility of changing our board committee structure. I asked at that time for your reaction to an idea that would involve 3 new board committees, each intended to recognize the unique features of several components of the UW system. 1, the 2 doctoral institutions. 2, the 11 comprehensive institutions. And 3, the UW colleges and UW Extension. The purpose of these new committees would be to focus attention on issues unique to each sector. For example, the Doctoral Institutions Committee might consider issues such as graduate student remissions, Division I athletics, or certain types of advanced research, issues that are peculiar to those institutions, their missions, and their faculties. Among the comprehensives, the question of how to build master's program arrays, for instance, might be a topic. Another example, both UW colleges and UW Extension have special relationships with county governments around the state, and their specific concerns might be best addressed by a colleges and extension committee. I suggest that any changes in the committee structure be a means to an end rather than an end itself. In other words, we need first to define with care our responsibilities in light of current circumstances, and to then decide whether specific structural changes will enable us to better carry them out. Accordingly, I propose to appoint an ad hoc committee of several regents, Kevin or his designee, various chancellors, and Jane Rideau, and charge them first to commit to writing the key functions and responsibilities of the board going forward, statutory and otherwise, and 2, to examine how the board can best meet those functions and responsibilities, whether through new board committees or by any other means. My request is that the committee report its recommendations to the full board at our December meeting. Finally, you'll recall that in his response to the advisory committee report, President Riley recommended that I appoint a special regent committee to identify selected system governance structures from around the country and to assess their strengths and weaknesses. This recommendation was, in turn, a response to the advisory committee's recommendation that a statewide conversation occur on the benefits and drawbacks of establishing campus-based institutional boards. A group of regents, chancellors, and staff created prior to Kevin's response is currently researching public system governance structures in other states in preparation for interaction with the legislative task force that we've mentioned previously. Kevin is comfortable with having that group perform the task described in his response. We will also expect a report from that governance group at the December meeting, including the possibility of institutional level boards, whether advisory or otherwise. Surely we need the best thinking of regents, system leaders, chancellors, and all other stakeholders on how to proceed with our work. Those are my comments. I welcome any questions. My intention will be to establish the committee and also to ask the existing group that's working to expand its jurisdiction, but I welcome your comments about the substance or the timing or anything else that I've put forward? Regent Bartel.
Thank you, President Spector. The idea of establishing 3 new committees, I think, has a lot of promise. I mean, I think certainly what we've heard in the last year or so is that the institutions that we govern have different needs. And, of course, each one has a different need, but there are categories, and the categories that you've described make some sense. The concern I would have, basically twofold with committees, and that isn't to say that I wouldn't support it, but the concern I have is that it is difficult to have committees that are responsible for a particular constituency, and then committees also that we currently have that are responsible for certain functions. And those kind of go this way and this way. And the question is, you know, when an issue comes up, does it go to the committee that is responsible for the comprehensives, for example, or does it go to the education committee, which is responsible for all of the institutions? So that isn't to say that that's an insoluble problem, but it is something that it is an obstacle to that kind of a structure. The second thing is that the second concern I have is that already we have regions that are split by function, and they, you know, some of us deal with capital planning and budget, some of us deal with education, some of us deal with business, finance, and audit, and we don't have an opportunity to participate much in the other areas because we are meeting pretty much simultaneously. So there are issues that some of us don't get to address except in the plenary session, and that is, we can't really get into the issues that deeply in the plenary session. So I'd be concerned about having so many meetings going on that you can't participate in issues that you would like to, on which you'd like to be heard.
I think both issues that you raise are perfect topics for the committee we're going to establish to think about. Jane has already raised questions with me about overlap that you described. We always have had this timing problem that you described, and it may be exacerbated if we don't do it right. But I think, on balance, it's still worth studying these possibilities, bearing in mind the issues that you raise. But I'd still believe it good for us to know going forward whether we should do something a little different here to respond to what I call current realities. Anybody else? Judy.
I would share some of what Regent Bartel has spoken to, but I too think this is well worth considering. The one thing that I hope would not happen would be that somehow Regents, because of the committee that they were part of, would feel that they kind of represented those institutions rather than the system as a whole. Mm-hmm. And that's one of, I think that's something to watch for, because you become specialists kind of in, and if that, I don't want to lose the whole.
Mark.
Mike, to what extent do we proceed with this kind of work at the risk of having it partially undone or completely undone by the state restructuring committee?
Well, I think that it's important for the best results by the state restructuring committee, which, as you are soon going to learn, if you don't already know, will be in the capable hands of Regent Falbo in part, to have our best thinking on this too. I think that there's a number of these questions, as for example, whether we have 3 new committees, are really internal issues. They don't go to external governance as much as they go to how we do our business, and I think it's perfectly appropriate for us to give that thought promptly. Whether it comes up in the task force or not, it still would be worthy of our comments. And I feel the same way about the other topic. I think we, given our responsibility, certainly should be a player in what goes forward. And the more we can get at that sooner rather than later, the more we think about it and give it our best approach, the more helpful I think it will be overall to the task force. So I don't see an inconsistency with doing that. Mike, maybe you want to comment? And I think we should be more specific, Kevin. We've been holding this in abeyance. But if you don't know, I am very proud to say that Regent Falbo has been named by Senator Darley and Representative Voss as the chair of the Legislative Task Force. I am confident he will do a terrific job from what I know of him, and I also think that the appointees that I've read about in the paper are going to be first rate in helping you do that. And I do look forward very much to our board working closely with the committee on what it does. But Mike, maybe you have some comments about that.
Just a couple. I think I agree with you on the group, the task force that's been appointed. Also, I think there's good representation and knowledge and history there to represent the UW system. I take the role as chair as probably everybody here that's been chair of something over time, that it's not to promote any agenda I might have, but it's to facilitate, to produce an outcome that's prudent and is the consensus of all groups that are represented there. And that will support the goals and objectives of the university system to maintain our status as one of the best in the country and to continue to improve on that status. So I look at my work as kind of the support work for everybody involved, and certainly open to anything anybody wants to put forward. Please feel that's always available. I'm not going into this thinking I'm any kind of expert in any way, shape, or form, so I'm going to need a lot of help. And starting from scratch is quite a challenge, but hopefully we'll do it and we'll get through it. And with the work that you're talking about, Mike, and the work of the task force, that by the end of next year, which I think is the timetable, we'll have something that we're all proud of and buy into, and that will continue to focus on what our main goals are, and that's our students.
Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thanks.
Mark, again.
Well, Mike, if I could just be so bold as to pretend to speak on behalf of all of my colleagues, we are absolutely delighted that you were appointed and that you accepted that task.
Yep. Jose.
I'm very much in support that obviously we do have to move into a new era. The one concern that I have, and I hope that we don't create something that almost in my mind looks like a shopping big mall where you have a big roof and you've got a lot of businesses under it, and about the only thing they have in common is they're all out there to retail sales. But you've got your section for clothing, and then you got your other section of the mall that's selling electronics, and you got but they're all under one roof. And that we not forget that we really are a system, and it's not simply an umbrella under which a lot of independent businesses just happen to be under. And so I hope that as we move forward, we really keep that in mind, that we are a unified system, and a system that requires then a unified sense of direction and leadership. And one of the concerns that I also have, and I may be building on a little bit more on what Regent Bartel mentioned, that there hopefully will be opportunities for us as regions to, as a group, whether it be a committee of the whole or as an entire body, has the opportunity to engage in some thoughtful discussions over system-wide issues, and that not everything that is the entire business of the regions is only conducted via committees, and then we only get to come together and deal with those matters at a meeting like this, where we're basically just voting on things and don't have the opportunity to really engage in into very thoughtful discussion, because the format, the structure doesn't allow us to do that, because we need to get things moving. So that would be my only caution, is that we not, and again, the only thing I can think of, we don't create a big mall with a big roof and a lot of independent businesses under the roof.
I think those also are words to the wise to the committee that looks at it, and to us. I know I've tried, and I know the prior agenda setters have tried to include bigger topics for discussions for all of us, often on Thursday, sometimes on Friday, just for the very reason you're saying. I also should say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that at least 2 others of our group are on Mike's task force, and that's Chancellor Wells and Chancellor Cross. And I don't know if I missed anybody else of ours, but good luck to you guys, too. Dennis. And Dennis. That's right. And Dennis. And who else? And Mark. Well, I got 50%. I hope the Brewers do better than that. So I'm glad all of you are on. Chuck.
Strategy to talk about the evolving role of the region, and I think it's well. You said it well, and it is a strong and important thing for us to sort of proactively decide. I think that the advisory commission over the summer, I think I speak for the committee in saying that it was never our intention to suggest that the Board of Regents would have less, or it would be sort of a disappearing body. It was always the expectation that it would be an evolving role, and that it would be focused on potentially in different ways on the important issues of higher education. It would be less micro-focused, more macro-focused, more looking at questions of sort of how do we sort of shape higher education policy, recognizing that we're all in this together and that we have to find a way forward for sort of the higher education needs of the state. So I think the course that you've outlined in terms of the committee and then coming back to this group and trying to sort of in a proactive and positive way outline the future, I think is a very good one. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that front. I think it's a good direction.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to proceed that way then. And Kevin, I think we're over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Regent Spector. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all again. And I want to thank Tom Harden. We'll have a chance to do it more formally, and all his colleagues for a great meeting venue, and the reception last night at Lambeau was really, reception was exceptional, very enjoyable. We've talked a lot already about the task force. Let me add a few other things as food for thought. You'll recall that there are 6 discrete topics that the task force will take up, including the structure of the system, tuition flexibility, transfer, one of the topics we spent a lot of time looking at yesterday. The personnel systems we're in the process of creating, and the way the law was written, the UW system will staff that committee working with the Legislative Fiscal Bureau and the Department of Administration. So we've begun conversations with both of those entities about how we can best support the work of the task force in a coordinated way. Just to go back over some of the membership aspects of the task force, the budget called for a 17-member task force, and last week Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald and Assembly Speaker Jeff Fitzgerald announced their appointments. You've seen, I think, the names of those. On Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mark Miller named Senator Chris Larson of Milwaukee to join the task force, relatively new name that was announced recently. And you may recall that a while ago, Representative Steve Doyle from the La Crosse area was named to the task force as the appointee of the Assembly Minority Leader, Representative Peter Barca. The governor's 2 appointees should come very soon, from what we understand. So when the governor makes his 2 appointments, we will have the full complement for Regent Falbo's work to begin. We already heard about Regent Falbo, so I won't go back over that, but just let me say, Mike, I'm delighted that you got this offer and that you were willing to do it. So look forward to working with you in a new role, another role. It looks to me, as Regent Spector said, like we've got a very interesting, solid, good group to work with on the task force, and that I hope together, working with them, we can address some of the really important topics that are on the plate of public higher education in Wisconsin and around the country. I think that if we do our work right on this task force, we'll have some things that will come out of it that will once again emphasize how we are national leaders in the University of Wisconsin. So I look forward to that work. We are writing to each of the task force members as they get appointed, expressing our interest in working with them as the task force gets underway. We're also developing internally some background informational packages that will address each of the 6 items that the task force needs to work on, and I hope those will provide a good starting point for conversations by the task force members. And as you probably heard, a bill has been proposed to extend the deadline for the legislative task force's report. And the original budget bill, the task force was to have its report done by January of 2012. And even though Regent Falbo works fast, that I think people realize is probably a little too fast. So the proposed new deadline is January 2013, so a year later. And that bill is moving through the Assembly now. And I think it's significant to note, if we line up some timelines here, that we will be developing our budget request for the 2013-15 biennium and submitting it then well before the work of the task force is done, if the work of the task force bumps back to the new deadline of January 2013. Indeed, 1 year from now, in September 2012, the Regents will need to approve our next budget proposal. So I think we'll, working with Mike and his colleagues, we need to be mindful of those 2 timelines and see how we can coordinate things as usefully as possible. The governor could still put some task force recommendations that might require legislation into his budget proposal request in February 2013. Again, if the recommendations of the task force come out on or around January 2013, the governor generally will be submitting his budget request a month or so after that. He could use some of the work that was in the task force recommendations, and/or the legislature, of course, could include some of what came out of the task force in its version of the budget as it considers the governor's submission of the budget to them in February of 2013. So we actually have had a pretty good discussion of this already, but let me just stop there and ask if there are any other questions. Now that we've announced Mike Falbo's appointment, we can divert all the questions to him. So. Any other comments or issues with task force? All right. Hearing none, we'll move along to a related matter. At our last meeting, we devoted a good bit of time and attention to discussing the recommendations that came from the President's Advisory Committee on the roles of UW System Administration, the one Chuck chaired. Those recommendations informed some near-term decisions about the mandatory GPR budget reductions for UW System Administration, and will inform longer-term changes we're making in our relationships among the board, system administration, and the institutions. And Mike has alluded to some specific projects that relate to those issues earlier this morning. We have, though, just to bring you up to date, made a number of additional steps in responding to the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on the Roles of System Administration. We had a very good, I thought, extensive conversation with the chancellors about those changes at the Chancellor's Retreat last month. They gave us some very good advice. We're moving ahead with their advice with the implementation of a number of these administrative and what we might call cultural changes in the way we relate to each other. Our senior vice presidents, Michael Morgan and Mark Nook, are the point people for most of these operational changes, and there were more detailed discussions of these issues in yesterday's committee meeting. So I will let the Regent committee chairs present all that to you when they give their committee reports in a little bit. But I think you'll be interested to hear the steps, all the steps that are underway. After the Board of Regents September meeting, we primarily, or at our September meeting rather, we primarily focused on the larger overarching goal and intent of the new flexibilities. Now we're beginning the process of operationalizing these flexibilities, and that involves, you won't be surprised to hear, I think, a lot, and I do mean a lot of painstaking, detail-oriented work. And you can expect further updates on our progress in that regard at future meetings. I think with Mike and Brent's permission, I'll include an update pretty much every meeting, and I'm sure we'll be talking about the progress of the task force at pretty much every meeting over the next number of months with you, so you can look forward to that. So any comments or questions now about the recommendations of the President's Advisory Committee on System Administration and our response to it? Again, you will hear more detail in your committee chair reports, but anything right now? Okay. I think you wore them out right at the start, President Spector. So I just wanted to share some news from around the UW system then. UW River Falls reports that Charles and Ann Gow are donating their River Falls residence to the university to be used as an international center and temporary residence for visiting scholars. Charles Gow is the founder and chairman of the Commonwealth Publishing Company in Taipei, Taiwan. He taught in the Department of Economics at UW River Falls for more than 30 years, from 1964 to 1998, and served as department chair from 1971 to 1980. He also received the Distinguished Teacher Award in 1974. Earlier this year, the Gows established the Charles Gow Faculty Development Fund at UW River Falls. Through this fund, the College of Business and Economics will receive $25,000 a year to support faculty development. These recent gifts, combined with their past support of the university, make the Gows the most generous living donors to UW River Falls. Chancellor Van Galen says that through their generosity, the Gows have not only supported excellence within the College of Business and Economics, but have helped the university build international relationships to support its goals of global engagement. So congratulations to Dean and the rest of the UW River Falls community. UW-Platteville is moving forward with the inaugural year of its Center for New Ventures. The center's focus is to promote economic growth in Wisconsin by connecting faculty with businesses to help develop new programs and activities that support the mission of UW-Platteville in that regard, to develop new sources of revenue, and position the university itself to become more entrepreneurial. Over the summer, Michael Gay, who is the former business development coordinator for the city of Madison, came on board at Platteville as the center's director. He will serve as a link between the faculty and companies to make it easier for UW-Platteville to aid economic development opportunities in southwestern Wisconsin and across the state. So hats off to Chancellor Shields and the UW-Platteville campus for that new initiative. UW-La Crosse is once again dispelling that old stereotype of the dumb jock. The university is proud to share the news that its student athletes excel not only in competition but also in the classroom. In fact, UWL student athletes had a 3.21 GPA in 2010-11, the highest of any school in the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. It was the 10th straight year that UWL student athletes' GPA exceeded that of the general student body. That's not the only thing Chancellor Gow and UWL have to celebrate this fall. The campus officially dedicated the beautiful new Centennial Hall at UW-La Crosse, its first new academic building in 35 years. And speaking of new buildings, UW-Oshkosh recently dedicated Sage Hall, its first new academic building in 40 years. So Rick was waiting 5 years longer than Joe. That's because he's much more patient.
For the record, we haven't had a new academic building in over 4 weeks.
There you go. There you go. Very well said. Sage Hall, with its 27 state-of-the-art classrooms, 23 labs, and 2 lecture halls, is home to the College of Business as well as 5 departments and 5 programs of the College of Letters and Science. As Chancellor Wells noted, Sage Hall is more than just a building, but is, quote, a remarkable story of collaboration. Art Rathjen, who is president of the UW-Oshkosh Foundation, which provided about $5 million in donor support for the project, had this to say, quote, the world is still at war. The country is complaining about corporate greed, massive unemployment, and a gloomy financial forecast. But in the midst of this economic chaos, our university made an investment in the collective future of who we wanted to be in the years ahead. We wanted to fight the recession rather than be defined by it. Collectively, the university and the foundation resisted common fears of failure and joined the state of Wisconsin to build a new academic building. So congratulations to Chancellor Wells and Art and the UW-Oshkosh campus community. From UW-Stevens Point, we have news that a well-known campus landmark is getting a facelift. The cupola that sits atop the historic Old Main building on campus is currently surrounded by scaffolding as it undergoes repair to reestablish structural support, update its paint job and moldings, and replace current lighting. The cupola is a primary symbol of the UW-Stevens Point campus, so maintaining its repair, integrity, and appearance has significant meaning, according to Carl Rasmussen, the university's campus planner. The 22-foot tall cupola had begun to lean, become known as the Leaning Tower of Stevens Point, had begun to lean. Sections of the fascia molding, both above and below its columns, had fallen off, and paint was peeling. The restoration work should be completed sometime later this month, so good news for Chancellor Bernie Patterson and the UW-Stevens Point community. From UW Extension's Cooperative Extension Division, we have some meaty news, literally. At the Wisconsin State Fair this past August, the Wisconsin 4-H Foundation brought in $58,000 through the 4-H Governor's Sweepstakes Meat Products Auction. That's not only a lot of meat, but it's a $22,000 increase from the previous year's event. The foundation raises money throughout the year for scholarships for college students who were part of 4-H as young adults, for statewide program grants, and to help high school-age students participate in statewide 4-H events. So hats off to Chancellor Ray Cross and the UW Extension community. UW-Milwaukee reports that Chancellor Mike Lovell and Mary Ann Wright, who is a vice president with Johnson Controls, have been elected to lead the Wisconsin Energy Research Consortium. The year-old organization, headquartered in Milwaukee, will help position Wisconsin as a nationally recognized hub for energy, power, and controls research by increasing university-industry partnerships and federal funding. It brings together industry and the state's largest engineering schools and technical colleges to stimulate research discovery that will lead to new products and processes, develop an energy-related workforce statewide, and boost economic growth of Wisconsin companies. The academic members include the engineering schools at UW-Milwaukee, UW-Madison, Marquette University, and the Milwaukee School of Engineering, along with Lakeshore Technical College and the Milwaukee Area Technical College. So congratulations to Chancellor Lovell and UW-Milwaukee, and I might say that when Mike was engineering dean, he got started working with Mary Ann Wright at Johnson Controls right after he arrived, and it's produced a number of really interesting partnerships that will serve the whole state very, very well. So we thank you for that, Mike. GI Jobs magazine recently released its 2012 listing of military-friendly colleges nationwide, and I'm very pleased to report that all 13 of our four-year UW institutions, as well as UW-Waukesha, made the list. The list, which considers both financial and non-financial efforts to recruit and retain military and veteran students, honors the top 15% of colleges, universities, and trade schools nationwide that are doing the most to embrace America's service members and veterans as students. So we should all be proud, I think, to receive this recognition as we continue to do our part to support those who serve our country. In news from UW-Stout, the university reports that it expects about a 60% increase in the number of new international students on campus this fall as a result of new programs in the Office of International Education. About 80 students from a variety of countries, including as far away as China, Nepal, and Saudi Arabia, are enrolled, up from 51 last fall. Program Director Hong Rost says the university is aiming for at least a 10% growth each year to help it, as she puts, bring the world to Menominee. Among the changes this year include restarting 2 programs to support international students, the English as a Second Language Institute for students who need additional language skills, and Friends of International Students for local families to befriend a student. All across this system, we're working to enhance the international experience of our students, and the efforts at UW-Stout are a good example of putting that commitment into action. Also on the international front, UW-Washington County reports that Focus on China is the theme of a month-long community lecture series currently being presented on campus. Some of the topics include, quote, the significance of education in China, presented by Dr. Gilles Bousquet, Dean of the Division of International Studies at UW-Madison, and Outsourcing to China, a panel discussion with area business leaders and a Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation representative. Another example of bringing the world to Wisconsin. So congratulations on that to Dean Paul Price and the UW-Washington County campus. We also have some news from UW-Madison. We all know the growing prevalence and influence of social media, and a lot of focus on that over the last 2 days with the news of the passing of Steve Jobs. But the recent Bucky Challenge found a new and innovative way to make it pay off. The idea was the brainchild of Will Su, who graduated from UW-Madison in 2000 after majoring in finance, Chinese languages and literature, and East Asian studies. He's now a senior finance manager at General Mills in Minneapolis. The premise for the Bucky Challenge is pretty simple. Over a 2-week period ending this past Monday, Will and his family pledged to donate $1 for every new Facebook friend or Twitter follower to connect with the UW-Madison, the UW or the Wisconsin Alumni Association, or both, with the money up to $50,000 going to the university's Great People Scholarship Fund. The idea is not just to donate to his alma mater, Will said, but to try to make sure people stay connected with the university. The Bucky Challenge drew media attention you might have seen from all over, from the New York Times to the Chronicle of Higher Ed to the UK's Guardian newspaper. By the deadline, the challenge raised more than $19,400 in new likes and follows. But it gets better. The donor has apparently agreed to make a $50,000 donation to the Great People Scholarship Fund at Madison. So congratulations to Chancellor Ward and the UW-Madison community. President Obama recently announced that a pair of UW-Madison researchers and a recent alumnus are among this year's recipients of the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. Material Science and Engineering Professor Michael Arnold, Chemistry Professor Daniel Fredrickson, and UW-Madison graduate Samuel Zelinka, who is now a researcher at the USDA's Forest Products Laboratory in Madison, will receive the awards, considered the highest honor the federal government bestows on young science and engineering professionals. The Early Career Awards program was established in 1996 to encourage the development of scientists and engineers embarking on their independent careers. The directors of federal agencies that fund research select finalists for these awards, which are passed on to the White House. The 3 Madison scientists will join the rest of the Early Career Award winners for a ceremony at the White House. So congratulations to Dr. Arnold and Dr. Fredrickson and Dr. Zelinka, Chancellor Ward, and the rest of the UW-Madison community. Finally, we often talk about making the college experience accessible to more people. Well, a program at UW-Whitewater is doing just that. 5 or 6 years ago, UW-Whitewater biology professor George Clokey was approached by a student with disabilities inquiring whether he could take part in the school's field trip to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. At the time, Clokey said they weren't set up to accommodate the student, but he made a promise right then to get a course going for students with disabilities. Last summer, 3 UW-Whitewater biology students who use wheelchairs were part of Professor Clokey's trek to Yellowstone. Doing field work on wheels has its challenges, but all 3 students were along as the group powered up the grassy flanks of Devil's Tower, over the high tundra of Beartooth Plateau, and along the steamy boardwalks of the Midway Geyser Basin. One student described the experience like this: it's just getting out of the comfort zone and trying something totally new. Professor Clokey hopes future trips will be even better. Kudos to the professor, Chancellor Telfer, and the UW-Whitewater community. So before I turn the floor back over to you, President Spector, I did want to tell Chancellor Hardin that I've written a limerick for him and for our colleagues at UW Green Bay to celebrate the board's visit to this wonderful place. It goes like this: we came to this school by the bay, so compelling we wanted to stay. With deep roots and strong wings, their interdisciplinarity still sings, making Phoenix the bird of the day. That concludes my report, President Spector.
Thank you, Kevin. We will now embark on our regular reports, and we'll start with Regent Vasquez.
Thank you very much, President Spector. The Education Committee met yesterday. We had what I would consider is a little bit of a deceptive agenda, in that it only called for one formal vote, but yet the discussions that ensued and the presentations that were made were really very, very thought-provoking. As I mentioned, we had a couple of presentations. One was the presentation of the UW Parkside Campus Academic Plan, and the second one was a presentation on UW Green Bay's vision and the Conference Center for Biodiversity. I'd like to simply make some highlight statements about the two presentations. Let me start with the Parkside presentation. Provost Terry Brown shared with committee the work underway at UW Parkside, framed by the development of their campus academic plan. The university is engaged in the strategic alignment and coordination of multiple activities and efforts, and resulting in a renewed commitment to student success at the UW Systems, as the UW System's most diverse campus and one with real challenges in terms of student retention and graduation. Provost Brown also shared with us a progress report on the rebuilding of UW Parkside's teacher education program, and assured us that we will hear more about that as the program moves forward. That the committee is very interested in that, because one of our priorities is also in teacher preparation overall as a committee, so we're very interested in hearing future reports. Additionally, UW Parkside is the last of the UW degree-granting institutions to present its academic plan to the Education Committee under the process that we have been following since 2008. Provost Brown was under a lot of pressure to really leave us with a very impressionable report, and she succeeded in doing that. Moving forward, there will be a new process, one that will emerge out of the restructuring of academic program planning, and you'll hear more about this in a couple of minutes. Second presentation that we heard was from Green Bay, and in her introduction of Dr. Robert Howey, Director of the Conference Center for Biodiversity, Provost Julia Wallace called the Conference Center a stunning example of how UW Green Bay implements the education we heard described in Chancellor Hardin's morning presentation. And the committee most definitely was in full agreement on that. The Conference Center reinforces UW Green Bay's select mission centered on problem solving, interdisciplinary, and sustainability. What the center offers to students, faculty, and staff, and as well as K-12 students, really is remarkable. It's a jewel here in the campus, and we're very pleased to hear about the many things that it has to offer. It is definitely an amazing center with amazing work taking place in it. After those two presentations, we moved on to the inaugural report by Interim Vice President Mark Nook, who also, again, was under pressure to really leave us with a memorable inaugural report, and he succeeded in doing that. We covered he covered several very important items as part of his report. The first discussion was on the challenges of the academic affairs recommended by President Riley in his response to the report of the Advisory Committee on the roles of UW system administration. And given the importance of the topic, I would like to share with you what was reported. Mark addressed 4 areas singled out by the President: academic program planning and review, UW system grants made to UW institutions, transition of certain advisory groups and programs to the institutions, and addressing the surfeit of the UW system initiatives. Mark's office will with input from the institutions, is reforming the academic affairs grant programs to provide the majority of funding in the form of institutional change grants to advance the growth agenda goals of the UW institution. A draft of the request for proposals has been distributed to provost and system administration staff for review and will be ready for distribution later this month. We're very pleased to hear this, because it's again changes that are consolidating, streamlining processes and activities. As part of the committee to transition some statewide advisory groups and programs to UW institutions, 4 candidates have been identified. These programs include the Institute for Urban Education, the International Advisory Council, the Women's Study Consortium, and the System Advisory Group on Liberal Arts. The Office of Academic Affairs has already had discussion with provosts about the transfer of these groups, and a request for proposal process will be developed for institutions to submit their interest in hosting one of these programs. So they will be moved out of the central administration. The office is working also to streamline the selection of system-wide academic initiatives while continuing the system's commitment to the growth agenda and inclusive excellence. One of the things that we asked, and I was very pleased that we were asking the amount of nods that were seen in the audience, as a committee we asked for a grid that would give us a much better visual understanding of the breadth and scope of the individual initiatives that I was just mentioning, such as the LEAP, inclusive excellence, access to success, along with the relationship to one another, and how they are integrated under the umbrella of the growth agenda. One of the things that became apparent to us is that we hear a lot about initiatives and grants and many things, but we tend to see them in silos, and many times we don't really understand how they all fit or how they all relate to other initiatives. So we're hoping that that grid will be very helpful to us. The committee, with input from the chancellors and provosts, had a very helpful discussion of the appropriateness and inappropriateness in several instances of some of the required indicators that have been asked under of the UW system under Act 32, which is imposing a new requirement system or a system of accountabilities reporting. And what's interesting about this system's accountability that we have to produce, it does separate UW-Madison from the rest of the institutions. So we did have a very lively discussion on that. This new accountability requirements will be challenging to meet, and work is underway to comply with this. What's going to be interesting is that there will be a lot of discussion on even the definition of some of those accountability indicators and how best we can really tell our story. As an example, what does it really mean when it talks about what is our responsibility in either job creation or job placement? I think there's many ways to look at that. The goal is to have a new planning, and another thing is that there is a goal to have a new planning and review process in place by September 2012. Revising the current academic program approval and review process will require changes to Board of Regents policy and system administrative policies. And again, this falls in line with the earlier statements of President Spector of how we're just looking at making changes overall. First step includes forming a task force with representation from across the system of faculty, staff, and administrators to develop both new policy and a new process to govern academic program planning, review, and approval. And that task force will be put together relatively soon. Overall, the restructuring will entail a deliberate reconsideration of the roles of UW institutions, UW system administration, and the Regents. So I believe the new normal is change, change, change. Recall that in his response to the advisory committee, President Riley recommended that UW system administration remain responsible for program array and be removed from the quality assessment piece of new academic programs. The quality piece will be left to the institutions. Much of the committee's discussion then focused on questions of quality and what role and responsibility the Regents have to have in ensuring this. Again, President Spector, in reading portions of Chapter 36, did remind us that as Regents we do have a role in ensuring the quality in the questions related to that. So we are, as a committee, looking forward to some very thoughtful discussion on that. What will we need from the institutions so that we can fulfill our governance roles and responsibilities while maintaining the appropriate balance with the governance role clearly is going to be at the forefront of our thinking. We were told that the provost and the senior vice president have already engaged in some rather robust discussion of potential changes, and it appears that again, lots of discussions will be occurring. So all of this is to be continued, and I look forward to our bringing back to the full board further discussions and recommendations. And finally, led by the interim senior vice president, by Mark, the committee had a discussion on the Education Committee's priorities for 2011 and 12. Despite everything else that I said earlier, we still have to have some priorities in the work that we're going to do. Topics that we identified were changes to academic program planning and review, the growth agenda for Wisconsin, including more graduates, inclusive excellence, monitoring and being kept abreast of the legislative task force on focus on transfer, teacher preparation, dual enrollment, meeting the needs and measuring the success of adult students and veterans, and prior learning assessment. So I think we have a rather aggressive set of goals that were priorities. With that, concluded our discussion and presentations, and then we moved on to approval of the consent agenda, which consisted of the approval of the minutes from its July 14, 2011 meeting. And then we also had two resolutions, Resolution 1182, approving the appointment of Dr. Philip Farrell to the UW School of Medicine and Public Health Oversight and Advisory Committee of the Wisconsin Partnership Program to fill an unexpired term ending October 31, 2012, and that would be effective immediately. And we had a second resolution, Resolution 1183, approving revised faculty personnel rules at UW-Milwaukee. With that, President Spector, those are our resolutions that we're moving forward.
So you're moving the adoption of those two resolutions?
That is correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone want to remove either of those items from the consent agenda? Does anybody have any comments or discussion about either item? If not, all those in favor of the two resolutions, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Mr. Falbo.
Thank you. We held a joint session with Capital Planning and Budget Committee, and Regent Bartel will report on that joint session. We then reconvened as the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee to take up adoption of our audit charter. We heard from Elizabeth Dion, Director of the UW System Office of Operation Review and Audit, on the proposed charter. The committee approved a resolution adopting the Operations Review and Audit Charter for the Office of the Operations Review and Audit. The charter defines the purpose, authority, and responsibility of the internal audit activity of the University of Wisconsin System Administration, establishes the Office of Operations Review and Audit, authorizes access to records, personnel, and physical properties relevant to the performance of engagements, defines the scope of internal audit activities, and identifies the standards of audit practice expected for personnel. The charter is consistent with definition of internal auditing, code of ethics, and international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing, and is consistent with public university systems across the country. Program review of the higher education location program called HELP. Director Dion highlighted a recent completed program review of HELP. She outlined the review objectives and the audit approach. Director Dion indicated the program is very effective in meeting the needs of prospective students, parents, and high school guidance counselors. I think we were all surprised to learn that HELP manages the electronic application process. All electronic applications to all of our colleges and universities comes through HELP and then is distributed to the appropriate school. User perceptions are very strong. The review concluded HELP to be an effective and valuable program to external users and UW institution staff. The review also made 5 recommendations that UW Extension will formally respond to and agree to implement these changes by fiscal year 2012. Office of Operation Review and Audit Quarterly Status Report. Director Dion presented the quarterly status update of the Office of Operations Review and Audit. She addressed ongoing projects the office is working on, as well as current and/or pending activities of the Legislative Audit Bureau, which may impact the UW system. The Legislative Audit Bureau is in the midst of their annual audit of the UW system. In addition to the completed review of the higher education location program, current projects include review of Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act implementation, NCAA Division III athletics at La Crosse, NCAA Division III athletics at Eau Claire, policies affecting students with disabilities, undergraduate academic and career advising, and privacy controls related to personally identifiable information. Ms. Dion also indicated the office had just launched a survey to help determine those areas of highest risk and exposure to assist in selecting areas to include in the 2012 audit plan. We then went on to trust funds asset allocation analysis. Doug Herr, UW System Trust Funds Director, presented information and analysis on current assets allocations within the long-term and intermediate funds. He indicated that doing this type of quantitative analysis, such as the mean variance optimization, it was riveting stuff, helps to confirm the asset allocation strategy.
Is there an acronym for that?
Oh, gosh, I hope so. Obviously, it's tumultuous times in investing. This year, we were also able to take advantage of a planning model provided by Common Fund called the Monte Carlo simulation. I questioned the naming of it myself, at which time Regent Pruitt asked if all of his assets and investments could be run through the Monte Carlo simulation, and there was some discussion of that will not be included in the minutes. Primary conclusion of the analysis are that the investment policy decisions made by the committee are meeting objectives, and current spending plan continues to appear reasonable and prudent. We then had a report on the 2011 proxy voting season results. We heard from Tom Reinders, Senior Portfolio Analyst, on the UW System Trust Fund's participation in issues involving discrimination, the environment, and substantial social injury via proxy voting of shareholder proposals. The 2011 proxy season saw the filings of 348 proposals related to social issues, with nearly half of them coming to votes. By June 30th, 164 social issue proposals resulted in shareholder votes. 120 were withdrawn, 53 were allowed to be omitted by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and 11 are still pending. We went on to a report of acceptance of bequests over $50,000. The committee formally accepted 6 bequests with a total value of $1,125,288. We then approved the minutes of the July 14th, 2011 meeting of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. We had a report from Vice President for Finance Debbie Durkin on gifts, grants, and contracts, fourth quarter through July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2011. The total awards for the period were $1.5 billion, a decrease of about $137 million compared to the prior year due to the significant amount of ARRA funding received last year, along with some timing difference in the reporting of award data. $1.5 billion is a lot of money. That's pretty good. And then we had the report of the Senior Vice President, Michael Morgan. Update on the changes underway as outlined in the President's response to the report of the Advisory Committee on the role of the UW System Administration. He indicated that in addition to the regular involvement of the chancellors in the policy direction of the UW System through monthly meetings, new opportunities have been added. 3 chancellors are currently serving on the President's Cabinet, and 2 chancellors participating in regular calls with board leadership. Within the area of administration and fiscal affairs, Mr. Morgan indicated there are pending changes to the audits to be performed in 2012 and beyond. In addition, efforts are underway to implement the Act 32 flexibilities and delegate to the institutions as appropriate. Some of the flexibilities he mentioned included new block grant budgeting, new personnel systems, capital projects costing less than $500,000 and funded entirely by gifts, delegation authority for the higher education purchasing and travel policies. Mr. Morgan gave a status report on the HRS, Human Resource System, implementation. He indicated there are still challenges with stabilization, but his hope most issues will be resolved by the end of the calendar year. And the committee identified possible priority for the coming year, including changing the audit focus, which I just talked about, implementing the ITMAC management system and the Act 32 flexibilities, developing the 2013-15 biennial budget. It comes up quick. And NCAA Division I athletic oversight, GPR fee allocation, and relationship with for-profit universities. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move the adoption of Resolution 12A1, adoption of the Operations Review and Audit Charter, and Resolution 12B3, acceptance of new bequests. And I make that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second to Mike? Jeff? Does anyone want to remove either of those items from the motion? All right. If not, all those in favor of the motion as made, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Jeff?
Thank you. As Regent Falbo indicated, the Capital Planning and Budget Committee met jointly with Business, Finance, and Audit to hear some presentations at the outset of its meeting. The first, which was presented by UW Green Bay Library Director Paula Ganyard, described the university's vision for the renovation of the nearly 40-year-old Coffran Library, which is right next door here, to meet the learning and research needs of today's students and faculty, while trying to anticipate what technology holds in store for information storage and delivery in the future. And it was a very interesting presentation because it made us all think about how what we have long referred to as the stacks are being compressed. We're having fewer and fewer books and more electronic delivery of our information. And what does that mean for 20 years from now or 40 years from now, and what should we be doing in anticipating those needs in terms of our capital planning? Very interesting presentation. We also heard presentations by UW Platteville and UW River Falls of their respective master plan updates. The master planning process causes our universities to give serious thought to what kinds of facilities they may need over the next decade and prioritize those facilities. And it's a process that is very helpful both to the universities and to the Board of Regents. A carefully prepared master plan is not merely a wish list, although it is that. It's the reflection of an extensive and deliberate evaluation of existing facilities, campus trends, and student and faculty needs. And what we have learned is that it requires regular updates, and that's what we heard from Platteville and River Falls yesterday. Well, at that point, the Capital Planning and Budget Committee then convened separately. Our members are Regents Manydeeds, Pointer, Walsh, and Drew. And we heard presentations on 9 capital projects presented by 6 of our universities. And we approved the following 9 resolutions unanimously, and I now present them as consent agenda items. First of all, and these resolutions are all in your materials, if you had a chance to read them and you have questions, be happy to try to answer those. Resolution 1.3.E, which comes from UW-Madison, requests authority to construct the $52 million School of Nursing building, and that's at the corner of Highland Avenue and Observatory Drive on the Madison campus, near the medical school and the pharmacy school. The request also includes a minor increase in the scope and budget of the project and seeks a waiver to allow single prime bidding for the project. This project is funded with almost $18 million gift and grant funding, and will construct a 5-story building to provide space for faculty and administrative offices, flexible research, team space, and instructional space that will allow the school to expand its instructional capacity and increase its enrollment. It was, as you may recall, enumerated as part of the 2011-13 capital budget. Resolution 1.3.F requests authority to construct the first phase of the Student Athlete Performance Center project, which has been known as several things over the past year or two, but informally known as the Badger Performance Center project. This first phase, which is funded by $17.9 million program revenue supported borrowing, will construct a new access tunnel from the basement of the McLean Center to Camp Randall Stadium Field and remodel the first and second floor areas of the stadium that were not renovated during the 2005 Camp Randall Stadium renovation. And it will also, you'll be happy to know, replace the artificial turf. That turf has been replaced a number of times over the years, and I think the last time was in 2003. But as we learned at Lambeau last night, turf is tricky. And it isn't just a matter of throwing it down and letting it wear out. There are lots of damage that is caused, and you have to replace it from time to time for the protection of student athletes. Resolution 1.3.G, also brought by UW-Madison, requests authority to lease space for the School of Medicine and Public Health Department of Family Medicine to replace the existing Wingra Clinic, which is on the south side of Madison. Following an RFP process that was begun a year ago, a developer has been chosen to construct a new clinic facility and lease it to the Department of Family Medicine. A careful financial analysis has led to the conclusion that a lease made more sense than constructing and owning this building as far as the university is concerned. The new clinic will provide comprehensive family medicine care largely to a Medicaid clientele and will also serve as a training site for family medicine residency programs. This issue of leasing versus constructing and owning is one that we're looking at carefully, and but it appears, based upon our analysis so far, that in this case particularly, where a clinic is involved, which has unique construction needs, and which means that you can't really sell that facility very easily when you're done with it. It makes sense to have somebody construct it and lease it from them. Resolution 1.3.H is brought by UW-Milwaukee and requests authority to construct $53 million School of Freshwater Sciences project. And you've heard about this numerous times in the past. This request also includes a small increase of the project and scope and budget relating to the heating system, and seeks a waiver to allow single prime bidding for the project. Regents will recall that this project is the initial project in the UWM's master plan initiative in Milwaukee. It will construct a 3-story integrated research laboratory, which is absolutely beautiful in the renderings, and you can see it in your materials. It's an addition on the south side of the existing Great Lakes Research Facility for its School of Freshwater Sciences. The new director was there at our meeting, and he described his excitement in this new program and the new facility. The addition will add multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research laboratories, shared core laboratory facilities, offices, instructional and collaboration spaces to create an environment that everyone thinks will attract a diverse group of researchers. This project, by the way, will seek LEED Silver certification. Resolution 1.3.I requests approval to seek the release of additional funds to continue planning the UW-Milwaukee's Kenwood Interdisciplinary Research Complex, the IRC Phase 1 project. Again, you've heard of this before. Planning for this project has progressed, and additional planning funds are necessary to reach the design report milestone and satisfy project construction schedule goals. That project is moving along. The Resolution 1.3.K and Resolution 1.3.L are brought by UW Platteville and UW River Falls requesting authority to modify their campus boundaries. And these boundary changes are consistent with their new master plans. Minor changes, additions, and deletions from current campus boundaries. And then Resolution 1.3.M is brought by UW River Falls and requests authority to reimburse the City of River Falls for Cascade Avenue assessment improvements. The state and the city are engaging in a reconstruction project involving Cascade Avenue, which, for those of you who've been to River Falls, know that that's a principal arterial for the city of River Falls and for the campus. It will benefit the university and will benefit the city by improving safety, functionality, and the aesthetics of Cascade Avenue. And the cost of that, including, I think, 2 roundabouts, is being shared with the city, and there is some property being exchanged and some payments contributed by both parties. And then Resolution 1.3.N requests authority to seek $2.3 million in building trust funds for the preparation of pre-design and preliminary design documents for 2 facility renewal projects pursued under the new categorical enumeration of the facility renewal program. This is the new program with the new flexibility legislation that was initiated as a system-wide categorical enumeration for purpose of upgrading the condition of university facilities, particularly those with substantial deferred maintenance, which is a major problem, as you recall, with our facilities all around the system. The 2 initial projects that are addressed in this resolution are UW Stout Harvey Hall renovation, Phase 2 project, and the other is UW Oshkosh Clough Social Science Center and Nursing Education Building renovation project. Now, the Harvey Hall project addresses deferred maintenance and upgrade infrastructure in a building that is almost 100 years old. Harvey Hall was built in 1916. And I asked, as we discussed this, whether this is a building that is worth saving, because that is always an issue when we are doing additional investment in old facilities. And I'm told that it has good bones. This is a building that is worth saving, and this will the upgrade will support programmatic remodeling of general assignment classrooms, several departments of the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and the Department of Psychology. So Harvey Hall will have another life. UW Oshkosh Clough Social Science Center and Nursing Education Building. This project will address deferred maintenance and upgrade infrastructure, and this is a 1966 building. Again, you asked the question because a lot of our buildings built in the 60s just aren't worth saving. Better to push them down and build a new one. This one apparently is worth saving, and this will support remodeling for general assignment classrooms, teaching labs, instructional and support space for College of Nursing, College of Education and Human Sciences, and the College of Letters and Science. And these 9 resolutions, as I mentioned, were passed unanimously by the committee, and I now move adoption of resolutions 1.3 E, F, G, H, I, K, L, M, and N. You may have noticed that item J, which was with your materials and which I will address in a minute, was not included in the consent resolution. So I've moved those.
Is there a second to Jeff's motion? Does anybody wish to remove any particular item from the motion for separate discussion? All right. If not, is there any discussion or comments on what's in the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Jeff, you want to continue?
Yes. There was an item 1.3.J in the materials which was removed, partly because there are significant questions that relate to this form of development. This is UW Platteville had a proposal which involves the university and the UW Platteville Real Estate Foundation to develop a private residential hall on the campus on state land to house approximately 400 students and a dining facility. This is a situation where the foundation would be a partner with the university, and questions have to be addressed as to how the state would be, or university would be protected if the private facility went out of business. What would become of the real estate investment? Who's going to operate it? Who's going to operate it? How it's going to be operated? Whether it's going to be operated by a private firm, or what role the university will play in the operations. Chancellor Shields would like this procedure to work so that it is seamless as far as the students are concerned. They wouldn't notice the difference between living in a university-owned residence versus a privately owned residence. And I think that we all agree that that's important. But there are these issues that have to be addressed, and I would say that once these issues are answered and properly addressed, this could become a prototype method for the development of residence halls on campus. It is also likely that this could be done much less expensively than the way we have been doing it in the past. So it deserves our attention and care as we consider it, and we'll bring back some thoughts on those subjects. Jose.
Just out of curiosity, as I was looking at this, how does this, or how would this differ from what is currently happening with the UW Milwaukee Real Estate Foundation? Are they so different that there's a need for you to characterize it as this would be like a new model?
It is slightly different from Milwaukee, and it's also different from the other. Green Bay. Yeah, Green Bay has its residence village. There are differences that as to whether the land is owned by the campus or owned by somebody else. The operations obviously have different aspects to them. So, but we'll be addressing those things.
Thank you.
And finally, then, Associate Vice President David Miller reported that the Building Commission last month approved about $33 million of our projects, and so we are pleased at that. And, Mr. President, that concludes the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you very much. Jeff's report is an opportunity for me to make one comment. It goes back to what Judy and Jose said earlier about the role of the committees. And I thought their points were very well taken about making sure that we don't lose sight of the whole of what we do as opposed to just the part of it. But I do think what Jeff reported is an illustration of how valuable our committees are, all of them, and those that have reported today, and how much we appreciate the work you do. There's no way we as a group could take on all of those resolutions and all of those questions about the resolutions the way you do. And for all the committees, I appreciate that. I know we all appreciate very much what the committees do. Now, I turn to my esteemed colleague, Regent Crane, who's going to present a resolution.
It is my privilege to present the resolution of appreciation to the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay for the experience that we've had in the last couple of days. And I'd like you to indulge me a little to make a few personal comments. They will not include a poem.
A limerick. A limerick.
Oh yes, excuse me, a limerick, although I did enjoy it. I feel very honored, and this feels like a very special experience to offer this resolution of appreciation to this wonderful university, which has been a part of my life, my community life, for a very long time now. I am here often. I am extremely comfortable in this room and others on the campus, although as a directionally challenged person, I still get confused in getting one place to another. And yesterday I had to have help to get from the Widener back here in the most direct route. But everyone here is always so helpful. I am the resident regent, so to speak, in the sense that I live here. Now very happy to be joined by student regent Katie Pointer, who is also from this community. And may I say that I am also glad for Katie's presence at this particular time of the configuration of the board. It is nice not to be the only woman. I have also wanted to mention that there have been several other regents from this area over time, and I want to especially mention one who no one else may remember. But her name was Ruth Clusen. She was a member of the Board of Regents, I believe, in the 1980s, and she was an inspiration to me, and I wanted to mention her at this special time. I have lived in Green Bay since 1971, and so I have been here since the infancy of this university, if not the actual moment of its birth. I was here when UWGB occupied one building on Green Bay's east side, now Ann Sullivan Elementary School, which is part of the Green Bay Public School System. I came to know well the first chancellor, Ed Widener, who was so important in developing what this university became. And so I was here to see the beginnings of this beautiful campus and have watched the growth and increasing strength of this university in this region of the state. I, along with many others in this community, have been the beneficiary of much of what this university offers. I have valued the use of the library, and I now have books actually checked out from this library, some of them wonderful old books. I have learned from and worked with UWGB professors. I have attended many, many wonderful university events over the years. I've served on a number of advisory and support groups, including the Council of Trustees. I've participated in the outreach of the university, including the extraordinary Future Phoenix program. And I have made many, many friends who have been faculty, staff, and students here. I am tremendously proud of UWGB, and I know how important it is to the people of Northeast Wisconsin, as well as to its many, many students and alumni from everywhere. Many, many others from this community have the same kind of relationship with this fine institution of higher learning. I think we all here will agree that this has been a great couple of days. We thank UWGB for the warm hospitality of its students and its staff, the careful preparation that ensured that everything has run extremely smoothly, the meeting rooms, all of the amenities and help we have in running a good meeting here, the wonderful food, and the I also want to express appreciation for the inspiring and very informative presentations about the university, building on its strength to an even brighter future. And I also want to thank them for the weather and the beautiful autumn color that was surely arranged by the Chancellor. We are all aware of the tremendous amount of work that is required when the Regents meet on a campus. On behalf of the board, I want to sincerely thank Chancellor Hardin, Professor Provost Wallace, and all who have done so much for us to make this Board of Regents meeting such a great experience. We also thank those from the university and the community who have been a part of welcoming and informing us. You have also so effectively demonstrated what a great place this is to live and learn, and I am so proud to feel a part of it. And may I now offer the resolution. Whereas the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay advances the educational, cultural, and economic well-being of its region and state of Wisconsin, and whereas the UW System Board of Regents is delighted to gain a better understanding of the unique nature of UW Green Bay's interdisciplinary academic approach and its success in leading students to become creative problem solvers engaged in their communities. And whereas the Board of Regents appreciates the rich history of the original ECOU and the ongoing commitment of today's UW Green Bay to green initiatives, especially through the Crawford Center for Biodiversity and the Environmental Management and Business Institute. And whereas the board takes notice of the university's recent targeted success in enrolling more students of color, in increasing online offerings for returning adult students, and in boosting both first-year retention and the overall number of graduates. And whereas the board applauds Chancellor Thomas Hardin and the institution's systematic approach to strategic planning across the university, and whereas the board appreciates UW Green Bay's strong ties to the community, partnerships with other institutions and agencies, impressive record of private financial support, formation of the new UW Green Bay Foundation Incorporated, and effective citizen advocacy on behalf of the university and the UW system initiatives, including the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership. Whereas the Board of Regents embraces the spirit of Titletown in recognizing not only the NFL champion Packers, but also the Phoenix women's basketball team, which last spring finished 34-2, reached the Sweet 16 of the NCAA Division I tournament, achieved a top 10 national ranking, earned high academic honors, and captured the admiration of basketball fans around the state. Be it therefore resolved that the UW Board of Regents hereby expresses its gratitude to Chancellor Hardin and the entire University of Wisconsin Green Bay community for sharing their warm hospitality and providing an engaging and instructive experience. I offer that resolution.
Well done. I will be so bold as to say it passes by acclamation. Well, Tom, I add my thanks very much to all you have done and your team of people. I really believe after the 6 years I've been on now that all of you, whenever we come to visit, you have to do so much extra hard work. It's well worth it in terms of what we learn from it, how much we appreciate the importance of each of your schools. So thank you very much. We will adjourn. Accept a motion to adjourn the public meeting. Mark, is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. And in 10 minutes, we will reconvene, and I understand there will be lunches ready for us at 10:45. they planned an early departure for some reason, so we'll take advantage of it. Thank you very much.